Hello, it's Maureen here. Maureen Hamblin. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. Please like, subscribe, share if you like any of my content. Today I want to talk about healing from generational trauma. And this is something that I've been going through and working through, and I just want to share. I don't know, just want to talk. I'm a talker. I heal through talking. So yeah. So a lot of us, especially and I'm not saying that white people don't have generational trauma, because they do, but I can only speak about being Black, being African, being Kenyan, being Kikuyu. And our culture, my culture, is a very kind of shame-driven culture, where how you behave affects your family. So like there's almost this idea that you're never an individual. Like, it's never good enough to just be an individual. You walk and you carry your family. You represent your family well. So there's a lot of talk, always a lot of talk about representing the family well. So if you're well educated, if you marry well, if you whatever you do well, it's not just for you, it's for your family. So I remember being the first person to ever graduate with any kind of degree for my family ever, actually, on my mom's side, and that was a huge deal. And I had a lot of family members saying, wow, you've done this, you're the first person, you've represented the family well. So it kind of seems harmless in that way, because you're just kind of like, yay, and you're celebrated when you do well. But when you don't do well, you also shame the family, and there's a lot of pressure then to kind of conform. There's a lot of uniformity that's expected from you in order to keep the unity, in order to keep the family the family looking good. So there's a lot of strain from that. And from that, then I find, and I can only speak from my context, I find that people don't deal with the real issues, because you're sometimes constantly having to be what you're expected to be, rather than to be who you really want to be. And a lot of things are swept under the rug. Affairs are swept under the rug. Whatever generational issues your family has is swept, they're swept under the rug because you don't talk about it. And it's almost as if you don't talk about it, then it doesn't really exist and everybody's fine. We just have to look good. And the people outside look at your family and they think, wow, what a family. What a, you're so lucky to be part of such a family. And there's so many things. Sorry, I talk really fast, so I'm learning from all my editing. Whenever I edit my videos, I'm just like, oh my goodness, I need to slow down. So there are so many perks of being part of an African family. Like, for example, you're never like, when you give birth, people come from everywhere to see your baby, to support you, to do whatever, for you, which is something, being married into a white family, it's not really like that. And maybe other white families are like that, but my experience is that they're not really like that. But so you always have people, people support people. For example, we ended up in Ireland. My auntie had been there, and my uncle's family is there. So you always have people. We always support each other. We always look out for each other. But together with that, so as well as there are perks, there are also cons to that, in that if your individuality and your uniqueness does not suit the family, or does not fit the family's mold, of who you're expected to be, then you know, there's a lot of chastisement, and there's a lot of like, you must be, you must conform, you're shaming the family, you're doing this, you're doing that. So yeah, anyway, healing from generational trauma, I believe, as much as it's connected to your family, as much as it's connected to you know, your ancestry, has to be an individual work. So if you see something in your family, something dysfunctional, something that's not working, and you don't like it, oftentimes than not, you are gonna have to work on that by yourself, because not everybody wants to change. The reason why it's a generational trauma, generational curse, generational, whatever you want to call it, it's because people have enabled it. People have enabled this dysfunction. People have enabled whatever the trauma is, whatever the issues are, and yeah. And you, as the one that sees something and don't like it, you're gonna have to be the one that does the work. But I've got good news for you all, and that is that it is possible. And it's not possible, first of all, to change everybody. We have to come to a point where we recognize that we are responsible for our healing. We are responsible for ourselves. So you cannot force your opinions, your ideas, your whatevers on other people. They are responsible for themselves. But there is hope. So if you see something you don't like, a dysfunction you don't like, and you want to change it, it is possible to change it in your life. It is possible to heal for yourself. And for me, I have found healing in acknowledging the dysfunction. I think that's one of this is critical in our lives, you know, whether generationally or not, in your individual life. When we acknowledge that we have a problem, then we start to heal. If you don't acknowledge that you have a problem, you're never gonna heal. So acknowledging that there's a problem, there's a dysfunction, is a good thing. And then you know, start working on you. And for me, that has looked like going to counseling. That has looked like speaking, doing my videos on the dysfunctions that I've seen. Obviously I try my best not to shame anybody or hurt anyone or whatever, but I'm speaking from my perspective. And so getting counseling and reading books, I am constantly reading books on different things, especially related to family. And as a matter of fact, I want to do my PhD on families, on African families, looking at from a psychological and Christian and theological perspective. And because for me, I'm very passionate about that. And then I want to let you know that when you start your work of healing, it's gonna rub some people the wrong way, because it exaggerates the problem in the dysfunction. So when you start healing, when you start moving on, when you start saying, actually, no, that's not how I want to continue. My generation, I'm changing my life, and I'm changing my children's future, and I'm changing my children's future. There are people who are not gonna like it. You're gonna get called names. You're gonna get abused, you're gonna get marginalized. If there's any triangulation in your family, there's gonna be a lot of triangulation, and you're gonna look like the enemy. You're gonna look like yeah, the person that is shaming the family. It's easier when you're from a European background, in my opinion, depending, you know, maybe I should speak for like Irish, Northern Irish context, where yes, even though they're big on family, they're also big on the individual as well. So you can still be kind of weird and still be accepted, and because like you're not an extension of your family. This is the word. You're not an extension of your family. Whereas for African cultures and for mine, my tribe, my family, there's a lot of like, you're an extension to your to your parents, to your grandparents, to your ancestry, to your tribe, to your whatever. Yeah, so anyway, so yeah, you will find that some people are not going to like it, and it's going to be a very lonely place, a very lonely place. But you have to decide whether, like, what is best for your children, for yourself, for your children's children. Yeah, so so I just felt like I needed to talk to that, but I wanted to give somebody hope that there is healing and it is possible. And your mental health, the mental health of your children and your children's children is so important. And therefore, if it's that important and if you value that, then you must put in the work. But it is possible. And because I'm a pastor, I want to take it to the Bible, whereby you look at the families in the Bible and there's so much dysfunction in Jacob's family, and Isaac, Abraham, and they just keep passing on the dysfunction. And by the time you get to David and Solomon, it's really, really, really messy. And there's a lot of adultery. There's a lot of kind of fighting amongst the sibling. It didn't start with David's sons. It started with Jacob and Esau. It started, actually, if you go further back, it started with Cain and Abel. And it's just these things that we keep passing on to each other. And there just comes a time where somebody says, no, enough is enough. But because we live in a sinful world, sadly, there will always be a way. There's always a way that we can mess our children up. There's always a way that we can screw our children's lives. But I think we can do the best that we can, and we get to choose. So I'm choosing the things that I've chosen from my culture, from my family, that I want to keep. I've kept those, but there are things that I've, kind of let go. And then there are other things that we see in Tim's family that we really value. And there are things that we don't, and we choose to not take those. But we also realize that we are fallen human beings who are traumatized. Both me and Tim are traumatized, and we've come together, and we're trying to heal from our trauma while raising children. So there's bound to be a way that we can mess them up. But for me, I think the biggest thing that I believe I'm creating for my children is a relationship with God, not religion, because I have a very religious background. Tim has a very religious background. The spiritual aspect, the relationship, the day-to-day relationship with God, the surrendering of oneself and dying of oneself in order so that Christ can live inside of us. That, for me, has to be the one thing that I'm really just holding on to, and that I'm really kind of creating afresh and anew. Because I see that when we have God, really have Him, not religion, not going to church every week, not just, knowing, memorizing and singing and preaching or whatever, but a real, tangible, real relationship with God, then everything else pales in comparison. And even though we might get traumatized, I think our trauma is less severe because we have the identity that comes from Christ. And so I've just done a video, it's going to be the one before this, about dwelling. So if we dwell in the presence of God, and if He dwells in us, then we know who we are. Our perspective is clear, and therefore our purpose is clear. And so it's possible to heal from generational trauma. It's possible to heal from all your trauma, but it's going to take work. You're going to get enemies. It's going to be a lonely place, but the results are amazing. So I just wanted to talk on that. I'm going to do a longer series on this. So come back, subscribe. I love you.